Thank you very much for organizing this conference, which I think is a wonderful idea. It's a great way to bring people and scientists together. And yes, I will speak in English, so if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. My topic is actually resilience and how to keep people resilient and build resilient societies in times of crisis. And in this way, it's actually quite similar. I've just noticed to what Madame Fatma Shafiq just said. So I'll probably be repeating some of the points she just mentioned, but in English. But I hope there will be some new aspects for you as well. So resilience, why are we speaking of resilience? Resilience is a term that's been coined among psychologists and counseling studies, as well as in the social sciences, to describe the capability of systems and people and individuals to cope with significant adversity or risk. So basically, it's the ability to deal with and recover from shocks and from crises, and ideally, even to transform them into opportunities. So we're speaking at the point of time where we do know we have a crisis like we're having right now with COVID-19, and the question is, how do we make sure that people will be able to recover from it? And I will speak about some points which concern the individual, and at the end also turn to society as a large. So this is basically a summary of recommendations from counseling studies, similar to what Fatma said. So I excuse myself if I repeat some of her points. First of all, it's the most important aspect for everyone to basically just accept the crisis. Even if the crisis is not caused by us, we're not responsible for it, but it's very important to basically just accept it. We are limited basically, but it's also our power to the decision of how we deal with it, mentally, physically, socially. So it is the matter or the question how we react upon the crisis. And we can only react to it and take the action we can if we first of all accept. So how do we react? First of all, Fatma mentioned it, of course, it is very normal to feel anxious and to go through a difficult time. And yet at the same time, we should all and everyone should work on keeping a positive attitude. I know this is much more easily said than it's being done, but it is important in terms of finding an orientation towards a solution. But what does it mean, keeping a positive attitude? It's basically being grateful for what we're still able to do. We're being grateful for everything that is working, for everything we are able to keep up with in life. And if we are having difficulty in dealing with this, sometimes, and the neurologists amongst you will notice, it's just good to memorize, to come back to thoughts of positive times, because this will reactivate our brain in this way. Another strategy of remaining positive is deviating the thoughts from ourselves to the others. So it might sound simple, but it's actually working. It's helping others. So moving the conscience from ourselves to members of our family, to our children, to colleagues, to other people we know who might be of help. So in this way, we do not focus on ourselves as much anymore, but focus on other people, and that actually, gives us positive energy back. A third strategy is basically just try and push negative thoughts away. So it's like moving a cloud, literally. It's a training, like we can move our, train our muscles in our body the same way we can train our thought system, and we can train, the thought, you could say the thought chain that, follows one another. So it's a training process to try and, when we notice, or we're falling in this anxiety again, to stay positive, literally pull ourselves out of these thoughts and try to push them away and think of something else. It is truly a matter of and training, but it helps us in staying, and it helps us in feeling more powerful than we actually think we are. As a next point, which is very important, and again Fatma mentioned several of these points, is self-care, and this has several points are quite important here, and the most important one, which you also already pointed out, is structure. Why is structure so important? Structure is important from a scientific point of view because it gives us the feeling of safety. And in these times where we do not know what tomorrow might bring, it's a time of uncertainty, it's a time of anxiety. And we have to overcome this, or can overcome this, with finding structure. And that's the way of, structuring your daily life. So structuring time, finding new routines, finding new rituals, or keeping the old rituals as much as possible. Organizing time, literally organizing it for work, for breaks, for family, as well as for ourselves, which is quite important. We do underestimate it. We sometimes need time just for ourselves, as well as also very important time for physical movement as much as it's possible. I know within buildings it's different, but we do need time for movement. And we also know that, for instance, from the Chinese studies, that more than 70% of the people there gained significant amounts of weight, which is clearly unhealthy. So time for movement is essential, as well as time for virtual social contacts. I'll come to that in a second in more detail. So structuring the day and keeping a routine, finding a new routine. The next one, structuring space. It doesn't only apply to children, it actually applies to all of us. It is very helpful. We found that structuring the places we have into spaces for work. So where's the desk we're actually sitting on? Places for meals shouldn't be the same as the desk we're working on, unless it's unavoidable, but shouldn't be. As places for relaxation and for communication. So it does help the brain, apparently, on having these spatial structures. And speaking of relaxation, the next point, which is very important, is taking care of our body. And that doesn't only mean to get enough sleep and sleep at a certain rhythm, but it also means to move, as I said. And there are lots of videos available to everyone. We should communicate these to our people if they don't, are aware of them. But everybody who's on social media probably knows it. But there are more ways and more teachers who put their physical classes online, and it is essential to actually do this. It is completely underestimated what happens if we do not move, because body and mind are strongly connected, and the body does have an influence on the mind, and the mind has an influence on the body. And of course, it's very important to eat and drink healthy food, and not to eat more than usually, which is also something we found from Chinese studies. People did eat more than they used to, so that's why they gained weight. So yes, taking care of the body is essential. And by the way, just tiny things sometimes, use the stairs if you cannot leave the house. Use fresh air on the balcony if you have one, or just hang your head out of the window. It sounds silly, but it actually does help. Two more points I want to say about self-care. One is mindfulness about ourselves. I mentioned it earlier, it's quite important, and to actually keep some time for each individual. That implies trying the old activities we did online as much as they're possible, especially arts and music. And I'm grateful for the presentation on caricature, because this is just one example. It's a way of expressing what we're feeling. It's a way of, especially for the extroverts, but also for the introverts, actually, to get things out of our systems. When things are on paper or somewhere, they're actually not in our head as present anymore, so it helps us in dealing with the situation. So artsy and music activities are very helpful. Maybe find an old instrument, find something you have always been wanted to be doing, and use the time now to actually maybe do something you've never found the time before. Same goes for books. If we cannot find them, try to find them online. Audio books are available, and there are even things like 3D concerts if somebody needs them, or 3D museum visits. So there are opportunities out there, and we need to communicate them so that people actually, get involved into old as well as new activities. And finally, and I'm grateful for the number that Fatma put up for Tunisia, it's very important to talk to people if we do need help, because it is normal that we need to talk about this and to talk about the points and things that go on in our head. This means calling counselors, calling psychologists, calling helplines, but also calling just people we trust. If we don't, dare to call someone else, find the number of a good friend, of a family member, somebody we can just talk to. And they actually will be helpful and grateful to listen, because it helps them as well to not feel alone and to know we are all in this together. Most people are suffering from the same or from similar thoughts and anxieties. That brings me to my next point, and that is networks. It's very important to keep the networks alive. And of course, this needs to go through all the kinds of channels we're having available, besides the phone, it's the internet, it's social media, it's emails, but it's also maybe just writing a real letter if we haven't been doing this. The same as I mentioned with activities. Contacts here means not only speaking to the people we are regularly speaking to, but maybe also reactivating. Maybe this is reactivating contacts, reactivating friends we've been speaking to maybe in months or years, because this is a point in time, maybe the point in time where we actually have time to think about this and to reconsider whom we haven't been in touch with in a long time, and to reconnect to people we haven't been in touch with for a longer period of time. And also, one thing that's important about keeping in touch is not only listening to each other, but maybe also to share a time that brings positive energy. Because we do know that laughing, having jokes, or just exchanging, memories sometimes is like medicine. It does affect the immune system positively as well, not only the mental being. The mental health has an effect on the immune system, on the resilience of the body, and to share good and funny times with friends or family, but also with all the people we know is positive and essential. So to sum this up, this is a difficult time. We do all know this, and everybody's going through anxieties to be just healthy, to be able to buy in food for some of us, to be able to pay the rent. And yet the point I'm trying to make is, yes, this is all true, and there's no way to push this away. We have to be patient with ourselves and our families. And yet structure and reassurance will help us. And structure, I mean here again, in terms of time, in terms of space, in terms of mind and body, will help us to remain more resilient, to be able to cope with the situation better, and ideally even to find the time to try things that are new to us, and that bring or turn the crisis into a time of opportunities. Now, from a societal point of perspective, it is of course essential to especially take care of those who are the most vulnerable in society, and children, as we heard in the previous talk, are some of them. It is very important to strengthen basically what we call the adaptive capacity of those people who are the most vulnerable. And that means that we need to have the infrastructures, the social, the medical, psychological, economic infrastructures that allow us to keep society as a whole together. This, of course, has a lot of political dimensions, which I don't want to go into this talk because I don't think this is the right audience. But of course, it involves political decisions on a local, regional, national, as well as international level to prepare countries for these kinds of crises. But I want to point out a few things which we of course can learn, especially from this particular situation. And that is that it is essential, and if we do not have it, we should make sure that it's happening as fast as possible, to have access to safe, secure, and clean water and sanitation infrastructures and services. And of course, to have access to technology, not only to communicate and to reach out to the people, to inform them, to create awareness, but also, as we have it here right now, to connect scientists and experts. And this might sound silly, but there are regions in the world where people do not have access to internet yet, or fast internet. And this is something we clearly need to, if that's not in place as societies, we clearly need to put in place as fast as possible. And the third point, which I've been highlighting a lot here in the last minutes, and this is my last one actually, is not only the access to medical systems, which is of course absolute essential, but also the access to psychological help. So the ability to call counselors, to actually, as a society, to have studies for counseling, to teach people how to listen and to help people in these kinds of situations. And if it's over the phone or social media, is something we should have as societies. And to also consider it normal to have somebody to talk to. And this is therefore the biggest point I want to make here, to build the psychological or counseling infrastructure we need in order to give people the availability to speak to somebody, if it's not a friend or family member, but sometimes to get more scientific is maybe too strong as a word, but more structured guidance on how to deal with particular problems, especially if they come in combination with other illnesses, as Dagmar pointed out earlier. So I hope this was a quick summary. I tried to be brief. I know we're behind schedule, but besides being patient, remaining patient, trusting, keeping the trust in life and that we will all get through this, it's about keeping a positive attitude and building a resilient mental as well as body mindset in order to get through this crisis, but not only to recover it, but to maybe even turn it into opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you.